Would a Christian say, "Who will set me free from this body of death?" Would a Christian think of himself as trapped, enslaved, imprisoned in a body of death? Piper, you just can't believe a Christian can talk like that. You can't say that a Christian can say, "I'm sold like a slave to a slave master under sin." Piper, haven't you read chapter 6, verse 4, verse 17, verse 18, verse 19, verse 20, verse 22? All of them say something like verse 18, "Having been freed from sin, you have become slaves of righteousness." That's the Christian experience. Freed from sin, slaves to righteousness. That old slave master that held us, owned us, has been broken. Sin will no longer have dominion over you. Piper, don't teach these people that they should speak of themselves in terms of Romans 7:14. My response to that is, can a real Christian not say, "Who will deliver me from this body of death"? Not enough of you say that. You feel it, but you won't say it. There are people in this room who've known Christ for decades who've never said that out loud. You know what? Your kids need to hear you say that. Your wife or husband needs to hear you say that. "Oh, wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this?" It would transform relationships. Your small group needs to hear you say that. Paul was about 100 times more sanctified than anybody in this room. He not only said it, he wrote it for 10 million people and 20 centuries to read. Come on, let's get real with each other with our mouths and not go home and say, "Yeah, that's right, that's what he said, and I'm just a loser, blah, blah." But you don't ever say out loud in a group, "I'm so needy." So you might think you're needy, and you might try to act needy, but you come across as a pretty self-assured, got it all together person in the small group. And to your kids, you never make mistakes, etc. Verse 12, "Do not let sin reign in your mortal body so that you obey its lusts." Romans 6:14, "Sin shall not be master over you." So right after saying, "Don't let it be master," he says it won't be master over you. "For you're not under law, but under grace." Don't let it be master, it won't be master. And you've got, "Who delivered me from this body of death? And I've been taken captive to the law of sin. And the Spirit of Christ to set me free from the law of sin." Isn't Paul in verse 12 actually warning them not to let happen what sometimes happens? He says, "Do not let sin reign in your mortal body so that you obey its lusts." I don't think Paul would have said, "Do that," if it weren't a real battle, and you sometimes don't do that. It's not a given that that's not going to happen. It's not automatic. "Oh, good, I'm saved. I won't ever let sin reign in my mortal body." Sin will never reign in my life. It never takes me captive. It never asserts itself as an alien slave master over my life and brings me into temporary captivity. There'll be no moment where it gets the upper hand and acts like a king over me, puts me down and defeats me. There'll never be any of those. I think Paul says there are going to be some of those, and I'm telling you in verse 12, fight like hell to not let it happen. So, what do you describe it as if it happens? You might say something like, "It's so carnal. My old man, my flesh keeps fighting And I have to keep reckoning it dead and counting it dead over and over again. 1 Corinthians 5:7. Clean out the old leaven so that you may be a new lump of dough, just as you are in fact unleavened. Can't get any clearer. If you think the other texts were sort of patches with texts that didn't belong to each other, you can't say that about this one. It's all one sentence. Cleanse out the old leaven from Bethlehem. Cleanse out the old leaven from your marriage. Cleanse out the old leaven from your heart, your mind, and your body. Because, Bethlehem, you are unleavened. We fight. Oh, do we fight. To put it on, to take it off, to reckon ourselves. But we don't fight as people who are trying to decisively and irrevocably become something we are not. It changes everything in the way you approach your battle. You will despair. I promise you, you will despair if you fight to decisively and irrevocably become what you need to be before God. You will absolutely despair. The only hope that you will make any headway in becoming what you ought to be is to recognize you are it already in Him. And if you aren't, we are all hell-bound. And so embrace this great and glorious truth. The decisive, final power of sin to destroy your life has been broken. And in that sense, you're free. You are set free. So when he says in 7:23, the law of sin takes me captive, and in 8:22, I'm free from the law of sin, I think he means I'm free from the law of sin as my final and chief condition. So we're called to fight as Christians as those whose victory has been bought and who will win. And that's why he can talk both in terms of such triumph and both in terms of such warfare and periodic and temporary defeat. There's one other reason I think Paul might talk this way about being sold under sin in moments of defeat. In Galatians 5:1, it was for freedom that Christ has set us free. Therefore, keep standing firm. Do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. There, the very word slavery is used to describe the kind of thing chapter 6, verse 12 was warning against. Don't submit to a yoke of slavery, neither slavery to the law, nor slavery to sin. What if it happens like it happened to Peter? How are you going to talk about it? Might you not say with warrant something like, I am carnal, sold again under sin. Sin, like a slave master, just took me, made me afraid. I pulled away from the Gentiles. I stopped eating freely with them. I became a coward, and I was dominated by sin, and Jesus told me never to be dominated by sin. Oh, wretched man that I am, who will deliver me? God, forgive me. Have mercy upon me. I look to you.